I stood on this spot last week at the People's Assembly rally, saying how appalled I was by the power games played by the government at a time of national crisis. Imagine how I feel now. It's probably how you're feeling too, right? Brexit was meant to be about restoring democracy. How is the current farce helping this? I joined the Green Party just before the 2015 general election, feeling absolutely furious about the direction that successive governments have taken the country. Working as a clinical psychologist in the NHS, I've seen the damage done by toxic austerity policies over this past decade. We've got a broken benefit system that leaves so many people feeling punished. We need to turn the tide on this misery.
Yeah, perfect.
Now, Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage have no intention of doing this. The chaos of a no-deal Brexit is perfect cover to cut the state and mould it in their image. A no-deal Brexit is an opportunity to loosen workers' rights, throw off environmental protections, sell off our NHS, cut taxes and drive down standards. We can't let this happen. We can't let this happen because this is not what Brexit was meant to be about. Brexit was about taking back control, decentralising power. But Brexit isn't giving this to us, is it? It is not giving it to us. It's centralising power even more in Westminster, leaving regions up here in the northeast feeling even more disenfranchised from our politics. We need more democracy, not less. That election in 2015 saw over 1 million people vote for the Green Party, and yet we saw only one MP elected. Our first past the post electoral system does not work. Not only are people left without a voice, with millions of votes being lost, but now we know it doesn't even guarantee strong and stable government. The reality is that true democracy is quite messy and complex, and if you try to pretend it can be clean and simple, you harm democracy, and it leaves people feeling ignored like they do not belong. This has to change. This is why the Green Party campaigns for using proportional representation in our elections. Boris Johnson says the threat of a no deal will deliver certainty. Well, just leave behind the fact that in 2018 we got 28% of our food from the EU. Never mind the statement that the British Medical Association have warned us that some medicines are under threat because they can't even be stockpiled. And even if we just move our attention away from the serious issue of peace and security in Northern Ireland, or the awful tragedy of so many wonderful EU nationals who have been my colleagues in the NHS now deciding to leave the country, even leaving aside all of that, no-deal Brexit tells us nothing about our future relationship with the European Union and its 450 million people. No deal is not the end. It's just a lazy and damaging act that plunges the country into even more turmoil. It's like the student who doesn't turn up to the exam but still demands a GCSE. The brinkmanship of Boris Johnson's government is diplomatically incompetent. The war talk of surrender and defeats is so damaging, especially at a time when all countries need to be working together to tackle the biggest existential threat that we face, the climate crisis. Yeah, well, in a recent poll, 71% of British people stated that the climate crisis is of much greater concern to them than leaving the European Union. The last few weeks has seen the way that the EU can work together to challenge climate threats. As the world's largest trading bloc, they have the ability, through the recently agreed trade deal with the South American countries, to put serious pressure on Brazil to cease its devastating deforestation campaign and protect the Amazon rainforest, the lungs of the earth. Meanwhile, 2 weeks ago, did you see what plucky Britain added to the process? There we were, world leaders, sending a trade minister to Brazil to beg for business at any cost. The climate emergency will not be solved by trading less with our nearest neighbours in the EU and more with countries like Bolsonaro's Brazil or Trump's America. if we are to get our greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2030, if we are to keep global warming to less than 1.5 degrees above the pre-industrial average, if we are to listen to the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that make it clear we have a decade to act, then we need to think very carefully about how we move forward. We need urgent, radical action now. Boris Johnson is playing a game that is all about himself. We do need an election in this country, but we need to have an election from a position where real options are open to us on Brexit. The Green Party have long called for citizens' assemblies as a way forward to reach a consensus, but it can't be done if we don't have the time. This is why we need to stop no deal, to protect this country's prosperity and security. A general election that might lead to a hung parliament will still not give us a picture of how the country wants us to take Brexit forward. As the Green Party have always said, the only way to achieve democratic clarity is as follows: that we need a people's vote on the terms of a deal with the European Union. So, yes to no to no deal. Yes to ending austerity and tackling the climate emergency, and a big yes to real democracy. Thank you.
Nick Hartley, ladies and gentlemen, Nick Hartley.